Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzilanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
I mean,
Thank you. And of course, the parsha is Tetzaveh, and essentially this parsha deals with two major subjects. Now, Harlan, I intentionally muted you. There's feedback from your computer. Harlan, do not unmute. Harlan, do not unmute. Harlan, can you hear me? Do not unmute. Stay on mute. When you want to say something, unmute yourself. But unfortunately, your computer gives feedback on when I speak. You can hear the feedback. So, at any rate, the Parsha of Tetzaveh essentially deals with two major topics. One is the clothing of the high priest, which we are dealing with and perhaps will come to an end with. And the second part of this Parsha deals with the installation of Aaron and his sons into the priesthood. So let's go into the clothing. So here we are. So before I go into the text, I will go right to the picture, and I hope you can see it. There we are. These are the undergarments of the high priest, and the garments of the priests. Interestingly enough, there were 8 garments that the high priest wore. Now, please, if you want to unmute a second, can you see the picture on the side here of the high priest as well? Do you see that there?
we can see it, yes.
Good. Okay. All right, good. But anyway, this is, of course, what we're focused on right now. And this is a tunic. That's what this is. And you can see it sticking out right over here. There it is. And possibly underneath here too, maybe. And I can pick that. Yeah, that's the tunic as well. Right. So let's go back into the text itself. So here's where it's talking about it. Excuse me. Veshibatsta haktonet shesh, and you shall create a checkered work, the undershirt or the tunic. And we'll try and take a look so that you can see what it means when it says it's checkered. It is the way in which it was woven. Just finish up the verse. Vasita mitznefet shesh linen, and you shall make the priest's turban, this mitznefet of shesh, of linen as well. Va'avnate, and a belt to aseh maseh rokem. And the belt you shall make of the work of an embroiderer. So let's take a look here. So this is if I make it a little larger, you may be able to see the checkered work. Do you see carefully underneath how it was checkered in its weave?
We see it.
Yes, thank you. That is helpful to know. And this is the belt that we're talking about. And this is the turban that he wound to make into that headdress there. And these I love these pants that were made, almost looks like Bermuda shorts, right? That they did. So going back into the text itself now, right? Let's take a look. Finding the place. Veshibatsta, right? So it makes a verb out of mishbetzet. The shabetz, that word refers to a square, a square. Va'aseh otam mishbetzot, you should make for them. Mishbetzot, in other words, you should make that tunic of checkered work, the kulam shel shesh, and they're all made out of white linen. Belivnei Aharon, so that completes the listing of the high priest's garments. He had 8 different items that he wore, and we'll go back and take a look at that carefully. I want to review that. Belivnei Aharon, and for the sons of Aaron, ta'aseh kutonot, you shall make tunics. And welcome back. So here we are. We're talking about V'livnei Aaron ta'aseh kutonot. You shall make the tunics for the sons of Aaron. V'asita lahem avnetim. You shall make these belts for them. Umigbaot. And so their headdress is called a migbaat, and it has a different shape from the headdress of the high priest. Ta'aseh lahem, you shall make for them lechavod v'letifaret, for honor and glory, let's say. I'm going to see if I can find a picture of the apparently I do not have handy a picture of the regular priests and the high priest to show you the distinction of their headdress here at any rate. So, okay. Let's take a look at the Rashi here. So he says, "V'livnei Aharon ta'aseh kutonot." You shall kutonot. You shall make tunics for the sons of Aaron. Arba'ah begadim halalu. That is to say, these 4 garments. Here we are, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 garments. V'lo yoter, and not more. V'avnet umigbaot hi mitznefet umichnasayim. Okay, so the avnet, of course, is the belt, and the migbaot, that's the headdress. Hi mitznefet umichnasayim. Okay, that is the umigbaot refers to the mitznefet for the high priest. V'hamichnasayim haktuvim lamata, and also the pants that are mentioned, the briefs that are mentioned below, which they will be mentioned in a verse below, is what Rashi is saying. Let's take a look now. So, v'hilbashta otam et Aharon achicha, you shall clothe them, that is Aaron, your brother, you shall clothe with these garments, ve'et banav ito, and his sons together with him, umashachta otam, and you shall anoint them, from the word Mashiach, right? Mashiach means anointed one. Umil'eta et yadam, it means you shall fill their hands, right? Which means essentially to inaugurate them. The kidashta otam, and you shall sanctify them, vechihanuli, and they shall serve as ministers to me. So the word kohen, essentially, while we usually translate it as priest, its essential connotation is that of a minister, to serve as a minister. Rashi, v'hilbashta otam et Aharon, and you shall clothe them, you shall clothe Aaron with them. Otam ha'amurim ba'Aharon, that is to say, those that are mentioned regarding Aaron. Here they are. Choshen is the breastplate. The ephod is that apron, that special apron. Umeil, and the cloak, that's this blue cloak here, right? Uktonet tashbeitz, and the checkered tunic. Mitznefet, that's the headdress. Va'avnet, and the belt. And the tzitz was the little gold plate that went on his, tied to Aaron's forehead, that says Kodesh Lashem, sanctified to God. Umichnasayim, and the pants, the briefs, haktuvim lamata, that are written below bekulam. In other words, he needs to be dressed in all of them. The et banav ito, and his sons with him. That is otam haktuvim bahem, those garments that are mentioned and written regarding them. Umashachta otam, you shall anoint them. Et Aaron ve'et banav b'shemen hamishcha, you shall anoint Aaron and his sons with the anointing oil. Umileta et yadam. So this is, of course, an idiom. You shall fill their hands. Kol milui yadayim, whenever it refers to milui yadayim, the filling of hands. Lashon chinuchu. It has the meaning of to like train, okay, or to inaugurate, right? To begin some process. Keshehu nichnas ladavar, when a person enters into a matter, in other words, takes on a new role or a new task. Liot muchzak bo, that he should be associated with it, right? Me'oto yam fahala, from that day and on. Who Bahala, who that this person should be associated with it. Uvelashon las, and in French, right? Keshemimanim adam al pekidat davar, when they appoint a person to a specific task, right? Noten hashalit biado, the person overseeing it puts into his hand beit yad, a glove, shel or, of leather, shekorin gaunt. The modern French word for glove is G-A-N-T. Okay, so there's the word in Middle French. And here's the Yiddish, hand shoe, meaning a hand shoe. In other words, that's the Yiddish for glove. Al yado hu machziko bedavar, and by means of it, he holds on to a certain thing, right? Or he is. It could be machziko bedavar, meaning that by putting on this glove, it sets him in this particular place, right? He's understood to have attained this particular position. The Korin Lu'otam Mesira, and one calls this particular transmissal of this appointment, vestir. Right? You think of vestments, I think may be related to this word. Vahu milu yadayim. And this is exactly what is meant by milu yadayim, the fulfilling or the filling of hands. And now we mention these pants, right? These briefs. Make for them pants of linen, lachasot basar erva, to cover up the flesh, literally, of their nakedness. Mimotnaim va'ad yerechaim, in other words, from their midriff to their thighs, right, to cover that part. That's how long they need to be. And of course, the picture puts it very clear. It makes it very clear. Let's see if there's any Rashi on them. Yeah, here we are. And you should, for them, meaning for Aaron and his sons, Michnasei Bad, these pants of linen, Harei Chet Bagadim. And so you wind up with 8 garments lakohen gadol, for the high priest, va'arba'ah lakohen hediot, and 4 garments for a regular priest. And I'm going to keep going. V'hayu al Aharon v'al banav, and they shall be on Aaron and his sons. Bevo'am el ohel ma'ed, when they enter into the tent of meeting, or begishtan el hamizbeach, or when they draw near to the altar, the sharet bakodesh, to serve in the sanctuary. V'lo yisu avon v'metu, and so they will not bear iniquity, literally translated, v'metu, and die. Hukat olam lo uzaro, it is an eternal edict for him, ulazaro, and his offspring, acharav, following him. And we'll take a look at Rashi on this. Hayu al Aharon kol habagadim ha'ela al Aharon haroyin lo, and they shall be on Aaron all these garments al Aharon that should be placed on Aaron that are fitting for him. For al banav, and on his sons, al marim bahim, those garments that were mentioned regarding them. Bevo'am el ohel ma'ed, when they enter the tent of meeting. Ula heichal, in other words, into the palace. That's a heichal, meaning referring to the temple building, as opposed to the Holy of Holies, which is, of course, part of that building. But the heichal was that part where the high priest and the priests could go in to minister. V'chein Mishkan, and likewise with regards to the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Remember, the tabernacle also was separated off. The Holy of Holies was separated off from the rest of that particular structure. Vametu, that they die, halamadata. And so you learn, you can infer from this, shehamishamesh mechusar begadim, that to serve in lacking clothing, b'mita, it's a capital offense. To serve in the temple, when the priests served at the altar or in the sanctuary, they had to be properly dressed, properly adorned in order to do this. And it's interesting, there's a whole issue, right, regarding clothing. It's such a profound element of our culture, both our Jewish, in the Bible, as the Bible is stating it here, and also in general culture. We know that clothing is a nonverbal kind of communication. And when one just really can convey, respect or disrespect or lack of care by the nature of the clothing that you wear. And we still care about it. Chukat olam lo, it is an eternal edict. Kol makom shenechmar chukat olam. In any place in the Bible where it mentions eternal edict, hu gzeira, and he's translating this word chok as the Hebrew word for edict, right? Miyad v'ledorot, meaning immediately, and for future generations. La'akev bo, meaning that it is a kind of law. There are laws where if you don't do it, it's not significant. It's more an encouragement to do it this way. But if it's not la'akev, it means if you don't do that, you haven't violated anything serious. It is you haven't done it in the best possible way. But in this particular case, if it's a chok, what he's saying here is that to violate this is significant. So I was able to find a website that listed, I knew that the specific garments of the high priest, the 8 garments, all represented a level of atonement. And here I have from this article listed the atoning symbolism of the high priest's garments. So the temple and the sanctuary and the Mishkan represented, I think, 2 basic elements. One was an element that in trying to assist in a level of intimacy, that intimacy would allow 2 things. One is celebration, which is in other words, to celebrate God through thanksgiving and through praise, right? And also possibly through petition, right? That would be associated with those 3 things, but also forgiveness. That this basic understanding of how imperfect human behavior is, not because we're essentially created imperfect in the sense that we must sin, but rather that we have this freedom of choice and then choose to rebel against God or to ignore God or not to recognize that the purpose we have to live and to gain significance for our lives is in the service of Hashem. And that by acting in that particular way, we can bring down the divine presence into this world, that we are a conduit. Just like the temple or the Mishkan is a conduit, every one of us is a conduit. And I think there's something profoundly significant in the fact that the high priest, the person who ministers in this particular space, is filled with the notion of forgiveness and reconciliation, so that every single one of the garments of the high priest symbolized a basic level in which human beings turn away from the divine. So, being specific now, the tunic atoned for bloodshed. And in this article that I found, they go further and show why these particular garments. So some of these things I remember, some I may not, but remember the same term for tunic is referred to when Joseph's brothers took his coat, his of many colors, and put it into the blood, and of course, basically had gotten rid of him. And so that's why the tunic atones for bloodshed. That is what their intent was initially, until Judah talked them out of it. But nevertheless, it was their intent. The breeches atoned for lewdness. It says, after all, to cover up the basar erva, right? The nakedness. And we know that that is, of course, these are ways in which human beings really represent the antithesis of God's intent for human life. The turban made atonement for arrogance, right? The headdress, right? And by the way, that's part of the idea of wearing a kippah, that for a Jewish person, a male especially, to cover their heads, the idea is to try and remember there's something above you. There's no arrogance is a disgusting type of behavior. The belt atoned for impure meditations of the heart, and the reason is that the belt actually was placed over the heart. And there is, in fact, a custom nowadays also to make sure that you wear a belt so that you make sure that your head is over your lower part of your body. The breastplate atoned for neglect of civil laws. Remember, it was called the breastplate of judgment. The apron, the ephod, atoned for idolatry. And there is a word ephod that is associated with the creation of an idol. Okay. The cloak atoned for slander. And again, I'm not sure exactly how that worked. But again, we look at the kinds of behaviors that human beings unfortunately perform. And the crown, that is the gold plate they're referring. If I can show you the gold plate here. This is what we're referring to here. That's the crown that he's talking about. The crown atoned, that was worn on the forehead. It atoned for brazenness, chutzpahdik, acting in a chutzpah kind of way, which is different from arrogance, right? Although I suspect they're somewhat related. But I also know that it also was there for any, let's say, unintentional error in performing sacrifices. So I think there's a relationship between this and brazenness, meaning, brazenness means you're there in the face of authority, and you're acting in a way that is disrespectful. And I think there was a sense that in a case where a priest had a thought possibly, or was doing something and not fully concentrating on what they were doing, that the skull plate would come and atone for it. And there's actually a discussion as to whether or not this particular the skull plate was effective, even if it wasn't on the high priest at the time, possibly referring to times when other priests were performing sacrifices, because after all, they did not wear such a crown. So we're going to, I think we have covered everything in terms of this chapter. And yep. So we will start with the section that deals with the installation of Aaron and his sons into the priesthood. right over
It's
here.
kind of late now. I don't know.
It is. We're not going to do it now. I'm going to stop the share.
Uh,
Yes.
Rabbi, the two sons of Aaron,
Yes.
they did the wrong thing.
Yes. They did. They acted in. That's a whole discussion, of course, that we have discussed in Leviticus in Parshat Shmini. That's where it's brought out. Aaron had 4 sons, and there were 2 remaining sons who survived. So I'm going to stop right here.